Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. How are you today? How is everything? Can you hear me? Okay. It's so good to be here. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel. The title of the panel is rather long, and we don't have so much time, so please read the title of the panel. Decarbonization of transport through sectoral cooperation, the coordination of policies for achieving climate neutrality. It's all clear. Dear ladies and gentlemen, in our midst, I would like to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Jernej Vrtovec. Good morning, Mr. Minister, and welcome. Thank you so much. My name is Peter Frankl. I'm the CEO and publisher of the media company Finance, and it is a great honor to lead this panel. It will last about 1 hour and a half. We have the minister who will give us the keynote and opening speech, and then 6 panelists. Please be so kind and let me introduce the panelists to you. I'll have to read it because I cannot remember so much. I'm still young, but you know, the old age is coming slowly. Now, dear Mr. Minister, and then the next speaker will join us online, Mr. Walter Goetz, Head of Cabinet of Commissioner Adina Vălean, Commissioner for Transport. Then the second speaker, Mr. Stephan Neugebauer, is here. He is Chairman, ERTRAC Executive Group, BMW. Welcome, Mr. Neugebauer. Then, number 3, Dr. Iztok Seljak, President, Management Board, Hidria. Mr. Seljak, welcome. Then, number 4, Mr. Uroš Salobir, Director of the Strategic Innovation Department at ELES, the Electric Grid Power Operator Company. Welcome, Mr. Salobir. And last but not least, of course, our dear Mr. State Secretary, Mr. Blaž Košorok, here, yes. And as speaking of old age, I forgot the most important thing. Of course, Professor Dr. Tomaž Katrašnik, Professor, Faculty of Mechanical Engineering. Mr. Katrašnik, Professor, please feel so welcome. It is my big honor and also duty, because honor also always comes with duty, to give some opening remarks. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we think that we know where we are going. We think that we know the goals. Okay, maybe we actually do know the goals, but there are so many things. So many things are to be discovered. Mysteries remain unsolved. Stakeholders have different interests, and they talk to each other, but not very often. So some unsolved matters remain to be settled. The path leading to the goal, to the aim, is yet to be discovered. The knowledge, there is so much knowledge to be shared. But do we talk? Do we actually know what the other stakeholders think? This is a very important subject. And to go on, when are we going to learn? When are we going to share the knowledge? Are we going to settle and achieve some compromises on the go? Going on the path, learning by doing? I still don't know. But first of all, we do have to be aware that knowledge is the key thing. Without knowledge, and without the sharing of the knowledge, which is even more important, the path will lead us to a blind alley. And of course, this is something we don't want to end up. We want to end up in the bright new future, not in the blind alley. And since I am the editor of a financial newspaper, I do have to say that it's so important that the question of who will pay for all this remains also quite important. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to invite Mr. Minister Jernej Vrtovec to the floor. Mr. Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. So, dear colleagues, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome you to Bled Strategic Forum under the title, The Future of Europe. How this future will look like depends on our today's decisions and also on our actions. So we, the European Union, decided to reduce emissions by 55% by 2030 and to reach a climate neutrality by 2050. Transport and energy are two key sectors that have to deliver the biggest share of greenhouse gas emissions reductions if we are to live in a carbon neutral society by 2050. We are confronted with two seemingly impossible assumptions. Reduce emissions whilst ensuring sufficient energy and transport supply for the growing demand. It will take cooperation throughout the chain, from basic research, technology development, industry, and above all, responsible political leadership if we are to reach this goal. Despite the growth of demand, the energy sector is steadily reducing its carbon footprint. It's able to do so by adopting new technologies for energy production from renewable sources, developing smart grids and management, and improving ways for energy storage. This trend is reinforced by gains in energy efficiency in most sectors. First, industry. Second, housing and appliances. So, transport, on the other hand, is facing a serious challenge. According to ITF projections, global passenger transport demand will more than double between 2015 and 2050, from 50,000 to 120,000 billion passenger kilometers. So total global freight transport demand is expected to triple. This growth is correlated to the growth of greenhouse gas emissions from transport. Currently, transport produces around a quarter of all emissions. It remains the single sector that has not been able to reverse the trend. Emissions for transport will continue to grow for the next decade. Our social and economic paradigm is built on economic growth, global trend, and consumption. Therefore, the transport sector itself cannot do much to limit the fast growth of transport demand. And consequently, dear panelists, our measures must focus on improving management, improving efficiency, developing new technology, and providing alternative sources of energy. Our panelists today, dear guests, all main stakeholders that will have to develop solutions for decarbonizing transport. The energy sector will have to provide clean power, while the industry, with the help of the science and the research sector, will need to speed up its transition to low and zero emission vehicles. Most importantly, the European Union and member states will have to ensure appropriate ecosystem that will foster this transition in a sustainable way. I'm pleased that we have with us also a representative of European Commission, Mr. Goetz, who will give us some insight into the solutions proposed in Fit for 55 package. This crucial bundle of legislative on non-legislative proposals is aimed to frame our activities on the way to climate neutrality in the European Union. It addresses measures regarding CO2 emissions, foreign vehicles, broadens the scope of ITS system, increases ambition in sustainable fuels for transport, and sets clear goals for the infrastructure for alternative fuel supply. It also reinforces the legislation of energy efficiency and renewable energy sources. I therefore ask the panelists, in your opinion, has the Fit for 55 package addressed the right challenges in the right way? Is perhaps the industry ready to do more or act faster towards decarbonization? And what can the science and research sector do to help this crucial transition? And yeah, I will be also interested, what do you expect governments to do help this process? So, I am convinced you will have a fruitful discussion today, and I look forward to the conclusions of this important and for our future crucial panel. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your contribution, dear panelists. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vrtovec, thank you very much. So, dear panelists, I think that we have the questions. And definitely, these are not easy ones, but let's start with Mr. Goetz. Mr. Goetz, are you online? Are you with us? I would like to ask the...
Yes, I can see that you have me on the screen, and I hope you can hear me. Please shout if you cannot hear me. Good morning, everybody.
We can hear you. Everything is fine. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, dear Mr. Frankl. Thank you, dear Minister. It's an honor. I'm honored to be in this panel and to address you this morning on behalf of Commissioner Vălean, who is currently today in Lisbon to launch the Connecting Europe Express train, which is our train which goes across Europe under the European Year of Rail, and which will also reach to the Slovenia later on in September. I'm also very pleased to see that you do this panel in the context of the Conference of the Future of Europe, which is a priority for the European Commission, that we discuss with our citizens and stakeholders and in forums like this about how the future of the Europe could look like after this conference, proposals from the conference. Dear colleagues, I was asked to speak only 4 to 5 minutes, so I can only give a very, very short information about where we are here in Brussels on decarbonization of transport and your question on the cross-sectoral cooperation. As you know, the decarbonization and climate change policies is the top priority for this von der Leyen Commission. We have adopted in December 2019 already the Green Deal communication. We have adopted in March 2020 a draft climate law. We had on our side, Commissioner Vălean, our smart and sustainable mobility strategy in December 2020, which is basically a white book about how transport has to be transformed in the future to achieve the Green Deal targets. And most prominently, as the Minister has mentioned, we have adopted in July this year the Fit for 55 package. The Fit for 55 package are 12 legislative proposals under the leadership of Frans Timmermans prepared, where we have 3 key transport legislative files in that package. It is first of all a blending mandate for alternative fuels, kerosene in aviation. We have a maritime regulation which makes it binding targets for member states to build up charging stations and refueling stations for alternative fuels and electricity in all modes of transport, predominantly in road, along the TEN-T networks and on a fleet-based target, but also to have hydrogen and alternative fuel infrastructure at airports, maritime ports, and inland waterway ports. So these 3, the alternative fuels in aviation and maritime and infrastructure for these fuels is our key contribution to the Fit for 55 package from the transport side. But as the Minister has already mentioned, the Fit for 55 package has also a revised emission trading system for aviation, a new emission trading system for maritime, and also a new emission trading system for road transport and buildings, which is linked up with a new social fund to cover for the costs and social cohesion for poorer households. And we have also the new emission standards proposed for cars and vans, which with the trajectory up to 2030 with zero emission vehicles. I'm sure the panelists might say something on this from the engineering side. Speaking about Fit for 55, we have to not forget that we are in the COVID-19 crisis, getting out of it, which is shown by your forum, which is physical presence in Bled. But the transport sector is still struggling with reduced travel, with liquidity problems. And this is of paramount importance. So my first thesis here is that we cannot discuss decarbonization of transport without taking into account the stress test of the transport system due to COVID-19, because we need investments, as the minister has already mentioned, and lack of liquidity leads to lack of investment. And this is a countermeasure to the decarbonization targets. On our side, we have adopted also the recovery and resilience package with the RRF fund, which gives a lot of money to the member states to invest in clean technology. And they truly have selected up to 40% in many member states, clean transport, infrastructure and transport investments under this RRF money. A few theses and considerations about decarbonization. First of all, transport is essential for the functioning of society and economy. We cannot reduce transport. We cannot exclude certain modes of transport. We cannot go so far and say that we ask our citizens to reduce their mobility, because that would be that would not make them buying into our policies. The Green Deal is not a banning strategy. The Green Deal shall give the incentives for the markets and for the citizens, for the customers, to select more and more clean modes of transport. The second thing which I would like to highlight is the costs. What the minister already said, there is no decarbonization of transport and Green Deal targets possible without costs. And some of our measures will lead to higher energy and transport costs. But the EU Commission and the EU is also committed to social cohesion and to solidarity. And so we have with the social fund, of course, measures for that, but we need to take this into account. And as regards cross-sectoral cooperation, then I will stop. It was already mentioned. I have 4 points where I think we need a very strong cross-sectoral cooperation here. First is research and innovation, already said. Mechanical engineering is, in my view, the key cross-sector cooperation which we need in order to bring new technologies in the market. Secondly, it's global. It's global interdependencies. We cannot do it if we don't have a level playing field with the United States or with China and Asian countries. The third point is energy policy, because we need an awful lot of electricity, clean electricity, renewable electricity to go into electric mobility and in hydrogen. And I would be keen to hear from the panelists how they see on that side the realistic, our targets, how realistic, how they are, and how we can achieve them. And the final point, and I stop, is digitalization, which is a solution for almost everything, particularly in my view, to increase the capacity of the existing system through better usage of all modes and connection of all modes of transport, intermodal combined transport, and also road safety issue with connected cars, etc. So these are the 4 main points for cross-sectoral cooperation. And I stop here, dear Peter, and give back to the panel, and I'm happy to answer any question later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goetz. Just a small announcement to the audience. Each panelist will have 5 minutes for introduction speech, and then the debate will shoot off. The next panelist, the next introduction speech is by Mr. Stephan Neugebauer. He's from BMW, and also the group he's heading, the council. It is rather complicated, so I'll read it. ERTRAC, Mr. Neugebauer is from ERTRAC, is the European Road Transport Research Advisory Council. Did I read it correctly?
Excellent, excellent. Mr.
Thank you so much. I'm so relieved now. Please, Mr. Neugebauer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
You can either sit or you can either take the minister's place.
Sure, I will take the minister's place. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we all share the same vision. It is the carbon neutral road transport in 2050. Absolutely no doubt about this. The question is how to make it in a sustainable way. And sustainability has 3 dimensions at least. It must be sustainable in the economic perspective, in the ecologic perspective, and in the social perspective. So it's a huge challenge, and we have to solve this in a system approach, which means the vehicle, the infrastructure, and the energy sector. And this was mentioned already by the minister. So the latest announcement in this direction was the Fit for 55 program, as mentioned by Mr. Goetz. And the most important step for the road transport for the passenger cars is in 2030. It is in 9 years. We have to reduce the CO2 emission for new vehicle registration by 55% compared with today. This means, at the end, we have to convince 50% of the customers to buy a battery electric vehicle. That's it. Where's the problem? The battery electric vehicles, they do exist. You can buy them. They are at the dealer shop. Just go there and buy it. But we are far away from convincing more than 50% of our customers to buy these vehicles. Why? Where's the problem? It's the charging infrastructure. Because no one in the room, no one outside will buy a battery electric vehicle if you cannot charge it, if you cannot charge it at home, if you cannot charge it at work, if you cannot charge it in public. So charging infrastructure is the bottleneck. There is in the Fit for 55 program a proposal to create and to build this infrastructure under the responsibility of the member states. But to be honest, the targets are not ambitious enough. The proposal, in our point of view, we need to double the figure. We know the discussion in the member states that they say we will not be able to create this infrastructure, which is proposed. And we say, even if you do so, it's not enough. You have to double this. Second point, in 40 years, in 2035, according to the proposal from the European Commission, only zero-emission vehicles are allowed to be new registered. Only zero-emission vehicles. This means, at the end, battery electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell. But hydrogen fuel cell for passenger cars, private passenger cars, will not play a major role. So at the end, it's battery electric vehicles. Only battery electric vehicles. And here you can see that we are shifting from carbon neutrality target to a zero-emission target. And by doing so, we exclude technologies which are important to achieve the carbon neutrality, like plug-in hybrids using renewable fuels. Why are they a good solution for all these use cases where battery electric vehicles do not work properly? Because we know that in Europe, 80% of the annual driving distance from a passenger car is done by trips which are shorter than 100 kilometers. And 100 kilometers, this is a distance which future plug-in hybrids will be able to solve in an electric way. So 80% of the problem is solved, and the rest, the 20%, can be done by renewable fuels. And then it's 100% carbon neutral. Okay, it's not emission, it's not zero emission, but it is zero impact emission. Because we need zero emission in urban areas, in the city center, yes, but in rural areas, zero impact emission is absolutely fine, and carbon neutrality. So we should not exclude important technologies. We want to have a competition between different technologies. Please keep the competition of technologies. And my third and last point is the energy sector. And Mr. Goetz, you mentioned this, the need for energy. If we shift road transport to a fully electric road transport in Europe, then we need roundabout 50% of the today's electricity production in Europe, the total electricity production for everything, 50% we need for road transport. It's not 50%, it's 50% add-on. And the same direction will be taken by all the other sectors. The steel industry, the chemical industry, the production, the process industry, the households, the heating. So everyone wants to have electricity. And I never saw a plan how we can produce this electric energy for all the sectors in Europe in a renewable and sustainable way. So we are convinced that we still need energy imports to Europe. This means that we can produce energy in a very efficient way outside of Europe. Think about North Africa, where we can produce it in a highly efficient way at a low cost, and we can bring it to Europe in with a chemical energy carrier, hydrogen, renewable fuels. And this is a strategic chance for Europe to make a sustainable collaboration with Africa. The collaboration between Europe and Africa should not be only about refugees. It should be also in the energy sector. This is a strategic chance, but this is not foreseen for road transport in the Fit for 55 program. So I come to the end. 3 major points. By all the sympathy for going for electromobility, there's no doubt electromobility is needed, is good, and is there. The question is it 100%? And here we see 3 major points. Infrastructure for charging, absolutely not ambitious enough. The second point is to exclude important technologies like plug-in hybrids with renewable fuels or other things. And the third point is the electricity problem. We are not in the position to not to use the potential of renewable fuels. Thank you very much.
Dear Mr. Neugebauer, thank you so much for your thoughts, Mr. Neugebauer. And now, dear ladies and gentlemen, yes or no? Yes, very good. Because I have an important confession to make. I'm a person feeling so lucky. I'm so happy because my boss, he sits in London or in Stockholm. But Mr. Minister's boss, he sits in Ljubljana. And he is not such an easy boss, I would say. And he has called in a government meeting. Every Thursday he does that. Mr. Minister, thank you for having been with us. Maybe you would like a few more words to say bye? Come on.
Yeah, our Prime Minister announced that at 1 p.m. will be a government session, so I want to apologize also our panelists and also you, dear guests. So thank you very much, and see you next time. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, enjoy the government meeting. So the minister is still here, but immediately after he has left, you can relax. Okay?
According to law, I'm now acting minister.
Oh, shit. Okay, very good, dear ladies and gentlemen. The next speaker number 3, Dr. Iztok Seljak, President of the Management Board, Hidria. Dr. Seljak, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Good morning to all. I guess it still is good morning. We go a long way in mobility here in Slovenia, or the space called today Slovenia. The oldest wooden wheel with a shaft so far found on the earth is arriving from close to Ljubljana with the age of 5,200 years. So we were on the cutting edge then, and we certainly want to be on the cutting edge, at least for the next 5 years, to be modest. And we are delivering on that. You know, in the last couple of years, we have revolutionized diesel technologies with our pressure sensorics technology, digitally supported, and which results in slashing down the consumption of the current green diesel engines since 2019 for 25%, and consequently also all kinds of emissions. So we are now putting together the automotive cluster of Slovenia, which represents over 100 companies, 12% of the GDP of Slovenia, and over 20% of the export. And we are focusing ourselves and organizing around what we call, and is being presented these days to the ministries and will be next week to the public, at the first investment of 40 million euro in this direction, what we call the project GREMO, Green Mobility Innovation Platform for the Sustainable Future Mobility. And we will be focusing on breakthrough innovation coming here out of Slovenia on the 3 core fields. The first one is extra high, super efficient electrical motors. By developing and producing carbon-free, basically, electrical steel here in extreme low thicknesses in Slovenia, bonding this steel in a very special gluing technologies together in the status of rotors of electrical motors, uncomparable to today's mechanical clamping, altogether resulting in super efficient electrical motor, which also will be much more competitive in terms of the price and will enable much higher range at the same capacity storage available. The second field is what we would call the next level of the battery storage systems on the car, but not just improving what is known today in terms of the upgrade developments, more range for less price, which of course is the name of the game. But on the breakthrough side of this pillar, looking into further developing our what we call Vinci project, that is wireless induction charging from the road during driving in order to slash down the request for the batteries for about 80%, just leaving 20% of the battery, the rest supported with the supercapacitors, with quite some work already done in this direction, which we believe will completely change the name of the game in terms of the completely new business model on the electricity side. Range anxiety put down and away from the table. Electrical mobility being available in a completely different way and in a competitive way, and as well putting in place in the road a great support for automated driving, autonomous driving. And the third pillar where we think we have great expertise is that such a electrified car of the future will need to be extra light, because we do not want to move too much tonnage or weight around, obviously. So we are after extra light materials, but not just upgrading and improving the existing known classic materials, but looking at something like, for example, again on the cutting edge side of this pillar, already having over 50 PhD scientists now gathered around the what we would call future of the wood here out of Slovenia. And I think one of the directions absolutely to go together with them and to upgrade that is the extra light biocelluloses 5.0 mixed with different composite materials, and the processes to produce the parts of the future cars internally and externally. So these are the 3 fields that Project GREMO will now attack with all of our forces, where we certainly are looking forward, hopefully with you know, to alliance with the science, not only here from Slovenia, but on basis of the open innovation, which is what we do all the time, searching the best knowledge worldwide to integrate them into what we're aiming at. We will need to be addressing the education system, because the type of interdisciplinary knowledge that we are talking about is not coming from any kind of the faculty nowadays. We need an interdisciplinary knowledge of, you know, machine engineers, electrical, mechatronics, digital algorithms, artificial intelligence, understanding of the business models from the economic side, put all together. And then, of course, we are looking, hopefully, at the alliance with the government, with the state, in terms of supporting this research, also in the direction of the prototypes, which will be coming out of that demonstration projects, first of all, here, like in Ljubljana and other cities of Slovenia, being a great, I would say, small lab for the whole European Union. So we are thrilled, and we are looking very much forward to an incredibly exciting next 5 years, and I'm sure we will be able to deliver on all of that properly together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seljak. The next speaker is Mr. Uroš Salobir. He's from ELES, the power grid, the electric power grid operating company. And Mr. Salobir will tell us, he will answer Mr. Neugebauer's question, and I will help him. I will help him. Mr. Neugebauer asked, where will all this electricity come from? Mr. Salobir and I, we know the answer. It'll come from the socket. Is that, am I correct?
Yeah, and that's the end of the world, yeah? The socket is the end of the world, okay. Yeah, that is actually the main question we power engineers always get asked from the transport sector. Yeah? Is there going to be electricity? Yeah? Where are we going to connect our cars to the power system? Is it going to work? Are we here and there? So I would like to make even more complicated statement here, because it's not only about availability of these systems and solutions, or adequacy of the power system and availability of the sources, it's also the matter of the price of charge. I will give you an example, because it's very important. Assess that you drive to your home, you charge your car, and you pay 50 euro. Fair price for, let's say, 5 years in the future. But if you have a chance and do the same tomorrow, or the same day earlier, during the day, in a better sunny conditions and so on, you will pay only 10 euro. Now I'm asking you, what will the people do? Will they pay 50 or will they pay 10? And yeah, that's the key of the infrastructure challenge. Because if we bring the people the infrastructure they really need, yeah? Because if they pay 10, this means this is green electricity, yeah? If they pay 10, this means they have the infrastructure available at the spots where this 10 euro can really get into their cars. And this means that the question of electricity and the transport is extremely connected. And this is the key message of today's panel. So how to make all this stuff cross-sectoral and to really optimize the energy sector with the transport sector in the right way. And the problem of electricity sector is that the price is not the same throughout the week. We have the morning price, we have the evening price, we have the mid of the price. The price is changing from the hour to the hour. And the markets are going to exploit that because it's called spot pricing. That's a common sense. That's something what we do in electricity every day, and this is not going to vanish. This is going to happen, and we will be faced with this. And there is another trick here. Imagine you have a charger where 10 euro is served all the time. Where will the people go? To this charger, yeah? What will happen on this spot? Congestions, yeah? Everybody will go there. So we will create a change in the patterns of traffic. Wow. I don't think everybody thinks about that, but that's the real challenge which we see on the cross-sectoral coupling. And then the people, they will look to the governments. yeah? The governments should solve these problems, yeah? Create chargers on the right spots, yeah? Create smart chargers in front of the office buildings, create fast chargers on the highways. These hubs should be big enough to serve all kinds of buses. It's not just the personal traffic. I'm talking also about the taxis, buses, self-driving cars. It will happen for all of them, yeah? These movements, this connection between energy, renewable energy, and the cars, that's all around. And the governments, they will look into infrastructure companies, yeah? Bring us the solutions. Where is the solution? How should we do this and that? Who will invest? What are the investment models? So it is a very complicated thing, and it will require enormous effort, modeling, optimization, finding solution, being innovative, being really ahead. But I can tell you some secrets. Slovenia has it. We have done enormous work in this direction. The Ministry of Infrastructure is listening to the infrastructure sector. The infrastructure sector is extremely advanced. We have companies which have this knowledge. So maybe Slovenia can be in the front line of these new movements, of these new solutions, and to solve these new paradigms. It will maybe not be the most profitable business in the world, but it might be extremely important for the sustainability, for the matching of energy, for not doing the wrong infrastructure first and then repeating everything and doing it right in the second stage, because this is what we want to avoid. The right infrastructure will come in 10, 20, or 30 years, but we don't want to do it wrong first and then correct all the mistakes, because then the costs will just go up and never go down. Yeah? So, watch out. Watch out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. This was amazing. And now, Dr. Tomaž Katrašnik. Professor, will you be able to support all the theses Mr. Salobir has revealed?
Certainly, if he is confident, then science will solve it. But maybe, let's say, since distinguished speakers in front of me opened this broad topic, I can maybe focus on some details which are important. And I will start with semantics. So Dr. Neugebauer and Dr. Seljak talked about sustainable mobility and carbon neutrality, which I very much agree with. But I have some challenges with decarbonization, which might be used as a synonym for carbon neutrality, but it's not. I will say a simple example. On premium cars, we put carbon fibers on cars to decarbonize them. Does it sound a bit strange? And now let's go other way around. Why we put carbon fibers on car? To make them lighter, that they use less energy, and if they are powered by fossil fuels, they emit less greenhouse gas emissions. So what we want to reduce is fugitive carbon that comes from fossil sources. So carbon neutrality is okay. Instead of decarbonization, please use defossilization. Why? Because more and more people that are non-technical are entering this game-changing technology, and they are all of a sudden afraid of everything that has C in carbon. This is not okay. Please be aware, because you, from the politics and policy, make wrong impressions. Then we come to climate neutrality. I fully agree with this goal. But we should ask ourselves, is it enough? And I will make another illustrative example. Are we willing to sacrifice for carbon neutrality depletion of materials? Most probably not. Furthermore, have we solved what we will do with recycling, second life, usage? Not yet. And when we don't solve all this, we don't have sustainable mobility, which is more than carbon neutrality. And sustainable mobility has multiple goals, and one of them is carbon neutrality. And we should see the big picture. And indeed, we also have a tool to analyze it. It's called life cycle assessment. There are some challenges with it, but until we have low LCA footprint, we didn't reach the goal. So another illustrative examples. Now we want to say EV
fully agree, they are a main part of solution, not being against of it, but I use it as illustrative example. If every one of us will be driving a 2.5 ton EV with 700 or 800 kilos of battery, is this sustainable mobility? Today, some of such cars are produced with larger CO2 footprint, so coming before you buy them, than some small cars emit in entire lifetime. And we subsidize them because they are decarbonized transport, because this is just part of the picture that we see. And here is this importance of semantics that now come in the policies and subsidies. Certainly Green Deal looks at it, and Fit for 55, yes, but someone should understand the entire document, not just its chapter. And this is a huge challenge with politics and policymakers, which often, but certainly also obvious, like to have simple solutions. But there is no simple solution, and there is no silver bullet. This is the main message. It's extremely complex, and it will get even more. And now, with this, let's say, what might be some takeaways from this? EVs are certainly the main part of the solution, but as Stephan Neugebauer said, they're not the only one. Then, EVs are emission-free when you drive them, but not EVs have the same sustainable level. And if they are sustainable, not, LCA says. And now we go further. How we bring down this LCA? We should change everything. So putting vehicles on the road and providing charging infrastructure is a challenge, but it's a minor puzzle in the overall solution. We should change the way how we produce things. We should use abundant materials. We should use non-toxic processes, not energy-intensive processes. So the part might look like the same, but everything, how we came to this part, will change. And after this part is being used, everything will change also afterwards. And therefore, we need to do much, much more. And here comes, yes, how we will solve the solution. It's much more than was said. So certainly, what is the only solution? It's much, much more knowledge. But not knowledge only at universities. With us, it should start. And then, as was already also started with the ministers and exposed with multiple other speakers, we should create an efficient ecosystem which goes certainly first nationally, solid, but then internationally, that we bring this knowledge into innovative, fully paradigm shift products that will be sustainable. And therefore, we need much, much more effort than we have put in it now. And there comes the question you asked, Mr. Frankl, who will pay for it? Important question. But even more important one, who will generate the money that someone can pay with it? Big countries are in good way because they have entire circle in their hands. Slovenia, we are now looking how we will expend money. But where we will earn it, who will earn it, this is what Mr. Seljak has opened. And yes, I'm also active in these platforms, and I really urge the state, but also states in neighboring countries which might be facing the same problems, that we really have to set up much more efficient ecosystem. We need cross-sectoral coupling, we need integration, yes, but also we need a support on a policy level. Yes, I'm coming from the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, and I'm very grateful for to Mr. Goetz, who said mechanical engineering is an integrator. We always say this, but we are not alone. We have to cooperate with everyone. We have changed our curricula very recently. We are open to everyone, but everyone else should follow. Someone should finance this, and there should be funding instruments. We should come from TRL 2 to 9 seamlessly. We should be able to cooperate within the Europe, and someone should provide the framework. And these are not we, this is not industry. So the triple part of the helix should now jump in very extensively. And I think what we need at the end, we need cross-sectoral coupling, but for supporting us, we need also huge interministerial collaboration and new instruments, new agencies, and really new ideas how we make this create. And with this, I will stop, and I think this is a good starting point that I leave the floor to the State Secretary. Thank you very much.
Professor, thank you so much for giving or for having answered maybe the most important question. But you also asked, who will generate the money? The acting minister and I, the moderator, we know the answer. And we know that it's a lady. Her name is Christine, and she lives in Frankfurt. Mr. Košorok, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. So probably all the best comes last, or what? I was taking some notes, so it's a huge challenge before all the governments, not only Slovenian, but also in the Commission. I hope, Mr. Goetz, you took also some notes, because it's we have a homework to do, I believe, what we just heard from the industry, what he heard from the academia. So, but as said, we are prepared, I believe. So it's just for the government to wrap it up a little bit. So, or what? No. With Madame Lagarde, or what, Peter?
Christine from Frankfurt.
Good. So as said many times today, these two sectors, transport and energy, are connected. And that's why Slovenia has Ministry of Infrastructure. We are responsible for transport and we are responsible for energy. And we know, as you heard today, that everybody in the European Union, in the world as well, is facing huge challenges. What to do, how to do it on the road to decarbonization, or as Professor said, to the sustainable mobility at first, then to decarbonization and so on by the year 2050. So first we have to reach the goals minus 55% by the year 2030, and then being totally carbon neutral, hopefully by the year 2050. Industry is ready. I believe the academia is also ready. So let's do some work. So all these challenges which need to be done can be only done by cross-sectoral approach, intergovernmental approach, interministerial approach. That's why we also took this road in Slovenia, not only with Ministry of Infrastructure, but also with Ministry of Economics, Economic Development, and also Education, which is also quite important. Also, the European Commission has more or less recognized this need for cross-sectoral approach, and has proposed this on July Fit for 55 package, which is from, as you can see, it's a complex, it's interlinked, it's interdependent package, addressing all these main aspects that were touched today upon. Transport as such is facing with some new mechanism how to reduce the carbon footprint. Some of them will be or are at the time being for the industry, for the energy industry, are already market-based. I'm talking about the emission trading scheme, which will be now also for the transport and for the buildings, as Dr. Goetz also said. There will be some legal limits for the CO2 standards for the vehicles. There are some new standards. Alternative fuel infrastructure directive is also being now put in place, and they are for this charging, that you touched, charging and refueling stations for the alternative fuels, not only for the electricity, but also for the hydrogen. Hydrogen is something that maybe is not so touched and can be speak more about. More or less what to say in the energy sector. Everybody is pushing us into the renewables, into the energy efficiency. But as Peter said, where the electricity will come from, we know the answer. We are ready, we are prepared, and we need to take also into account what was also mentioned, that not all member states are on equal footing. This is quite important. This social view is very important. The starting positions are very different. So what to do? And therefore also the financial and organizational burden are not the same. If we compare that, let's say, Germany to Romania, Bulgaria, or Slovenia. Therefore, there is a risk level of the transition, and this transition can be very difficult. This means that some parts of, or some countries in the European Union will need more assistance than others. And the most important motto is that, like from the Just Transition Fund is that nobody will be left behind in this transition. So I firmly believe that the imperative of the Europe is to reinforce its economic and also the social cohesion in this way. The Commission has recognized that, so from all these files we can see, and responded accordingly to that. And in this social climate fund, however, it is also intended only to direct income for support the vulnerable households. What we have learned today, Dr. Seljak said that there are large investments needed for that, to reconstruct our industry that produce vehicles, not only vehicles, vehicle parts and so on. The companies are big employers, especially in Slovenia. They represent, 20% of GDP in Slovenia. And there are some new, as we heard today, some new projects in this value chain, as OEM supplier, as, for example, Hidria is. And I believe that they are not the only ones, and they cannot burn by industries alone. So therefore, there is a good idea which was supposed the Recovery and Resilience Fund. Something like that must be also needed, let's say, in the near future for the targeted EU programs. What was also mentioned today was in today's discussion is a cooperation on all levels, not only on the research, industry, policy, finance, and of course at the end of the day in the government. We are aware that further adaptation of the institutional arrangements will be needed to establish appropriate structures that will enhance cross-sectoral approach. And when we create, as a government or as the European Commission, when we create policies and measures for the future, we need to bring all the key stakeholders at one table. As said, research and development, technology, academia, industry, finance institutions, and at the end of the day, of course, the government. Of course, all the future governments will have to reflect on these challenges. So, and nevertheless, at the end, to have a conclusion, we should also give a proper attention to the social impact. Social impact is very important at the transition. The workforce, at the end of the day, is needed to drive this transition. So we need to adopt, our schooling system needs to adopt, our employment system needs to adopt, and to be supported by appropriate education, employment, and of course, social programs. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We have now roughly half an hour for the discussion. I have some questions here written on my piece of paper, but you, dear audience, you're all encouraged to take place, raise some questions, just stand up, and somebody will either bring you the mic or you will shout. The ladies there are showing me there's no mic. Correct. So please, do shout. But if you decide to shout, then you can take off your mask, so you will be rewarded. Already two. First the gentleman in the back, and then the lady here. He was first. I sorry? I thought it was ladies first. Yes, but ladies are first. It is. So it is. Sorry, that was a cheap shot. Thank you so much, madam. Would you like anybody specific from the panelists to react to your input?
Well, yeah, in terms of...
Choose your man. Choose your man. You have chosen Mr. Seljak.
In the moment when we approach the issues by exposing some, to say, problems, right? Like Stephan did, and then Uroš also did then with the solutions. I did not, I just went for the solutions, because at the moment when you start to talk about the kind of a problem, so, you know, we get a kind of a, we are viewed in a negative sense, that we are not up to the challenge, that we are not capable to do it, that, God forbid, we do not have the capabilities to do it, which is maybe one of the reasons that, you know, I'm holding myself back not to talk about it. And kind of we are always also in the trap of defending in a proper way our businesses, which I might be for defending my diesel business, which I did not talk about today, which is 20% of the Hidria and 400 employees right now here with a 40% global market share, you know. I'm not talking about that. We have the solution for that. We need to have it. But it is complex, you know. We do need to talk also about the problems, and we may call them challenges, because not to be afraid and not being capable of dealing with them, but just the opposite, to resolve them. And I will just give 2 additional cases how complex the whole issue is in that respect, and maybe not even LCA cannot solve that. I would call it strategic dependency, or else long life cycle strategic dependency. All of the electrical motors, basically, because of their efficiency today, mainly the main traction motors are permanent magnet DC motors, and we are running head forward into the new strategic dependency instead of the oil and Middle East and stuff which we know for the last 100 years, into the dependency on the rare earth magnets, but let's just add lithium and other stuff there, in and on China, for example. Do we want to be there? We are learning on the Halbleiter, you know, the electronics nowadays, how this looks like when we have our production lines in stoppage, because this is happening as we speak now. And it's not going to be just about customers maybe not wanting to buy. They will need to, because they will have nothing else. It will be about us not being able to deliver. And just another case, banal and trivial. 5 million electric cars and hybrids, and the capacity is being built for that in Europe for 2025, will need twice as much electrical steel as it is built today in overall Europe. And the time to market is 4 to 5 years from the decision about the investment. The steel will not be there, the electrical motors will not be there, and we will not supply the amount of the vehicles that we think we will supply. It is much, much more complex than we imagine.
So, Dr. Salobir, there is no socket for steel. You have the answers to everything. Okay, just kidding, of course. I suggest we move further. Thank you so much, the 2 of you. And the gentleman in the back. Oh, you are being, the microphone is being brought to you.
I don't need a microphone.
Well, it has been brought already. What
no,
now?
It's fine. It's fine. Okay. I prefer without microphone.
Sorry.
My name is Uroš. I'm an innovation management consultant, and I was delighted to hear all these complexities of this this topic, and you killed 2 of my questions. Thank you so much, because the complexity that is really. It is much more complex than it was exposed here, although it was exposed that it is a very complex issue, but it is a lot more complex. And the other is resource issues. Resource issues, not only the magnet, but we can have a long list. What we have very scarce sources, and also geographically not easily accessible resources. But that's that is a very, very important issue, and that will influence very much the future of these European visions. And I remember the Lisbon Agreement on Europe reaching 3% average R&D expenditure and so on, which has never been reached, and so on. So I have serious doubts. LCA is also very important, and thank you, Professor, that you mentioned some very, very important clarification issues, because I think the communication is very, very important, how we communicate it to the general public. And Mr. Neugebauer, as I understood, your assumptions with these challenges were based upon the current concept of owning cars and having more or less the same amount of cars what we have now. Here it comes a logistical question. Do we really need to own a car? Because what is the reason to have a car? To be able to move from point A to point B. But I mean, I don't care if I own a car. I want to get from point A to point B by an easy way of transportation. And I use my car, I would say, more or less 5% of the time. It stands on the street, it stands in my garage, it stands there. It's a dead capital. It's a dead capital. Why do I need and I have to pay tax, I have to pay this, I have to pay that, repair, depreciation, and so on and so on. It's a very expensive hobby. So do we really need cars to possess it? Or do we have to rethink the whole transportation system, which will reduce the number of cars needed, and it will reduce all the resources what we needed? And I know that the car manufacturer companies are not happy about this concept, but I mean, I can tell other sectors which are not
thank
happy
you.
about it.
So you're asking Mr. Neugebauer to react to your input?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Neugebauer.
Thank you very much for the question.
And then Professor Katrašnik.
Independent from the ownership, we want to have sustainable vehicles for each ownership. There's no doubt. The ownership itself, we have to ask the customers. And there is not the customer. There are millions of customers. And the question is, what do they want? What do they want? We are living in the free society. And there are some people, maybe like you, which says a more clear, I want to go from A to B. There are other customers which enjoy the mobility they have. And there are some which want to have something which they really like and it's exclusive and so on. And this should be possible in our society. And we do see a lot of new business models for having a car. But at the end, we see a really, really strong wish of our citizens to have a specific private car. If they own it or not, it's my private car. I have it all the time. It is clean when I use it. I have my personal things inside, and so on and so on. So I think there will not be a major shift in the near future.
Thank you very much. And I would like to add something to this. I find your remarks about owning the car very correct, and they are also logical. However, if you take away my car, where will I listen to my music? Where will I have my private space? I cannot have it at home. My car is my only escape. Professor Katrašnik.
Yeah. Thank you very much about the remark. So since I need to be short, I have just briefly mentioned the not availability of resources or materials, and I'm really grateful for you picking up on this. So let's say I will now try to really simplify this. I might not catch all the details, so please use it as an illustrative example. So let's say if we now talk about what we need in the future, as Dr. Seljak says, if we don't find highly efficient and very light electric motors, we are running in scarcity of rare earth. On the other hand side, if we don't find a post-lithium solution, we cannot drive around half a ton or 700 kilos of battery each of us. We don't have a material for it. And furthermore, if we go to fuel cells, if we don't find ultra low platinum or catalyst loadings of noble metals, or if we don't find solution for non-noble metal fuel cells, we don't have enough noble metals. So why I was so much emphasizing the need for new research, because if we move further on with current innovation level, which is high, but not high enough that we reach the goals that we want to have. So with current technology and say steep but incremental innovation, there is not very high chance that we meet this. So we need a paradigm shift. We need to be much faster, and therefore we are 500 million of people in EU, since we are now talking about the EU. And I think we have to much wiser use all the resources that we have on all levels to maybe reach this.
Yes, we are at the paradigm shift. So this
Some words about the sustainable mobility. We are only talking about vehicles, cars, and so on. Public transportation is also very important. How to modernize that, how to change the habits of everybody, especially, let's say, in Slovenia or in this part of the world, how to boost the new micro-mobility, how to do that. This is, I mean, we are talking only about cars, batteries, and so on, but the public transportation, not only buses, but also trains are some, let's say, the next new reality.
You touched a very important point, the different modes of transport, and public transport is one backbone for urban areas, absolutely sure. You used the word how to change the behavior of people, the habits. It's always very hard to change the habits. In my point of view, in our point of view, the only chance is to make a good offer. It must be comfortable, it must be cheap, it must be functional, it must be reliable. And here, we really have to do a lot in public transport in European cities.
Especially now, after the COVID.
Especially.
Going from almost no mobility, everything was closed, to the new mobility. And everybody was, let's say, afraid to go into the bus, according all these restrictions, COVID-19 and so on. So now is the time also for the public transportation to boost a little bit and to give some, let's say, PR that it's safe and secure and, of course, sustainable.
Maybe if I might just shortly pick up on this. Also, Commissioner Bulc once said, if we will replace all the cars that are now on the streets with battery electric vehicles, we will not solve the challenge. So I will make another illustrative examples. Not talking against the cars, we will need individual mobility. But let's say what we now try to build is, we want to build an electric train on the road, which has intermittency in charging. So cars will always be slower than a fast train, and we will charge them with fast charging, which will be extremely costly. So, and certainly here I think it's very important what State Secretary says, we don't have the same starting level. So Germany, France, partially Spain, and other countries already solved this by fast trains. But in this part of the Europe, this is not existing. So if I want to travel from A to B, and if I don't have the whole day, I pick the car, because there is no other solution. And this is about the offer. And I think another problem is that everyone wants to find easy and cheap solutions. And if I go step by step in easy solutions, I might end up with wrong solution in global minima, which is very expensive. And sometimes high investments are needed upfront that we will reach the overall goal. And so I think also in Slovenia, this might be a challenge in surrounding countries, but certainly many countries solve this. So again, we need tailored approaches.
Thank you very much, Professor. And let's not forget, dear gentlemen, bicycles, because I want to ride my bicycle, I want to ride it where I like. And now the audience, the lady in the back. Thank you very much, madam.
Ana Struna-Bregar from Sustainable Business Network Slovenia. Regarding decarbonization and climate neutrality, one huge problem is waste. To all of the panelists, I would put the question.
Just one,
yes.
one, not all.
Okay, no,
choose your guy. Choose your guy.
Mr.
Only one.
Katrašnik. On the
Mr. Katrašnik, you're so popular.
So the question would be the waste to fuel. I mean, we have huge amount of waste and it's growing. Is there a connection with the mobility?
There is a huge connection, but just recently over the dinner we have discussed with Dr. Neugebauer and Dr. Salobir, it's a matter of costs. So, you know, let's say, I will put a bit simpler example. If you just say recycling, if you want to recycle a small amount, it's cheap. If you want to go towards 80%, it gets tricky. If you want to achieve 100, it gets, in general, extremely expensive. And now, certainly, I think the also development of society can be measured by the amount of waste it creates, I would say so. And there is a lot of potential. There are technologies built, but what is currently, some of the challenges are that you can certainly at the end come to hydrogen, which is extremely clean and perceived as efficient. But you might easier end up with some fuels that do not have that well physical and chemical properties, which might be used in internal combustion engines, in cars, but even cheaper, you might get it in some combustion devices for stationary application. And so there a circle might be closed economically, but currently this is not very well perceived by overall directions in the EU. And yes, here we have to pay attention. It's not just about carbon neutrality, it's also about the toxic emissions. And what Dr. Neugebauer exposed, do we need always to be zero emission, or it's zero impact emission in rural area enough? And I think until we, exactly this is now semantic, until we don't use correct words and have correct objectives, we will not find the path. And this is problematic because some also big foreign companies do not like to invest that much in Europe because we don't have predictive economic environment. And this is exactly about strict targets. And when we have the targets, we will find the path. Your solution might be okay, but it depends on the objective we want to achieve.
Mr. Neugebauer, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you very much. So I think with waste, you mean at least something like biomass. Yeah. There's a lot of biomass in there, and thank you for the question. It's very important, and I think Esther, your question was going in more or less the same direction. So looking at the energy production, and this is the most important, and this is the starting point for mobility. Which energy options do we have? Here we have electricity. Yes, we can produce them by solar and wind. Nothing more, a little bit of water. Solar, wind, that's it. Water in Slovenia. Then we have electricity. Okay, do we have enough electricity? Here I have my question mark. What else do we have? We have hydrogen. But hydrogen today is made out of fossil resources. So we have to produce in the future the hydrogen by electricity. Do we have enough electricity? I'm not sure. What else do we have? We can go for biomass, and we can produce renewable fuels out of biomass, advanced biomass, whatever. And we have a study in our technology platform where we clearly point out, if we go for electricity, we have this certain amount of electricity needed for road transport, the 50% of today's total energy electricity production in Europe. If we go for electricity and hydrogen, the need for electricity goes up because we have to produce the hydrogen. But if we use the advanced biofuels in addition to electrification, which is absolutely needed, if we use the potential of biomass in addition, then the need for electricity goes down And this is the opportunity we have. But we are not, according to the Fit for 55 program, we are not allowed to use this in the future because of the zero emission paradigm in the 55 program. And therefore we say zero emission in urban areas, zero impact emission using renewable fuels also outside urban areas. That's it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. Now, we are slowly approaching the final questions. Is there anything else the audience would like to add to our conversation? Some more input? If not, I would slowly steer towards the end. And my last question would be, is Mr. Goetz still with us? Because he has been forgotten. He has been lost online. Mr. Goetz is not with us. No. Okay, so let's go on. And, you know, when we talk about different, I found this debate so great, but we touched so many things, and it's really complex. And if I look at it from a, let's say, managerial perspective, I would ask myself.
Mr. Peter, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, Mr. Goetz is back.
Mm-mm.
Can you hear me?
No.
How can you answer my question if you don't hear me? Okay, we'll try to improvise. It all seems so complex. And now my question would be, from a managerial perspective.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I don't hear them.
How do you know?
Okay, I leave now.
No, it won't work, so never mind. So it is quite difficult to understand. Do we need, as the managerial literature would say, an owner of the process? Who is the owner? Who gives the direction? Who is setting up the agenda and steering it towards the end? Do we need a hidden force here? And I know this is a very difficult question, but Mr. Seljak, you know answers to all those questions from difficult managerial perspectives. Do we need a charismatic leader? It's all about leadership, it seems.
I guess...
Please be short.
We all feel that we need a global leadership, not only in terms of the emission decrease and saving the planet and climate change, right? But also in other respects. I mean, we are present to the extremes of all of the kinds, asking ourselves whether we're going to survive because of other reasons, not because of the climate change. So yes, we need it's governments very likely, but not governments on the national level and not even governments on the continental level. We would need a charismatic leadership on the global level, and we are not just doing too well in this direction in the last period of time, I would say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Salobir, do we need a charismatic owner of the whole process?
I think we have to be very cautious about this question because there are possibilities. We have a China way of solving this, and we have also a Silicon Valley way of solving this. Yeah? We can have a huge company taking over all the processes and owning them, and then we will be dependent on someone like, you know, which companies I have in mind. So for me, yes, devoting some sub-processes to certain entities to optimize them will be key, will be needed. On the energy side, on the energy towards transport side, that will be needed. But to put everything into the hands of someone or to look for someone to solve everything, I think it's very dangerous, and we don't want that.
Mr. Neugebauer, would you agree with Mr. Salobir that this pointing out or appointing an owner of the process could be undemocratic, or is, in this certain case, democracy an inhibition for efficiency?
a centralistic owner of the process will never work because it's so complex. We learned about the processes before, the life cycle assessment, the different options. So it will never work. What we need is a coordination. We need someone who sets the rules. This is up to the government to set the rules, but in a realistic way and in an intelligent way. And then we need to coordinate the different sectors. And then we need the citizens and the market to decide which solution is the best for which use case. So we need the competition of solutions.
Competition of solutions. The last remark, the last input goes to Professor Katrašnik.
Okay. So this is
I told him already that it will be the final remark and that he has to be smart and witty and short.
I should propose something, he said to me. So let's say it's good to speak where you have some knowledge. So I'm professor of energy engineering, so I will talk about energy and transport sector, not more, because not going beyond would not be okay. So let's say maybe in today's perspective, if we look at it. So we aim at some common goals, objectives, although with some numbers they are clear, but a lot of details remain unanswered. So I think there is one way we have to really define the point B more exactly. And then is how we go there. Certainly there are some common approaches, but not one size fits all. I think this is very clear. So everyone from us can start from scratch. And everyone can build its castle, but we will mostly build them out of sand, and this will not be okay. Also, if someone, centralists, built a castle for us, it might look not appearing to us all. But let's say, what I try to imagine is, what if we build some Lego bricks that are some smaller, consistent pieces, and then with these pieces, everyone can build its own castle. So what I'm aiming at, since we talk that much about digitalization, I think all the problems that we now talked about on the global level cannot be solved in talking, not in thinking in one person. And therefore, a long time ago, mankind developed computers. If you have 3 goals, if you have some input, you put it to the computer, and most probably, if there is no bug, he will calculate something which goes beyond human capacity. And therefore, I think we need really digital twins of what we talked now, because we now propose a solution. How we should test a solution? If I put, let's say, more gas in the grid, if I need more electricity, it will affect all the sectors. It will affect the habits, how people will work, how they will travel. And if I have this in a computer program, it can calculate it. And it can calculate for Slovenia, for Croatia, for Austria, for whatever countries. And I think this is kind of a systematic approach, not owning the entire decision-making process, but on the EU level, at least, I think we should be approaching towards providing countries with tools that they could be solving their problems most efficiently. And I will just come to national energy and climate plans. We have developed them in so different manners that are incompatible, mostly in the EU level. Why? Because we do not have common tools and we don't have common methodology. And this can be owned. Yes, it should be centrally owned who builds Lego bricks, because Lego bricks are generic. But then everyone should be allowed to build its own castle in an optimal manner.
Professor, in 2000, after this, I mean, there will be a process, but I guess it'll all be solved. And tell me, in 2060, will your life and my life be better than it is now?
We will not be here anymore, most probably, if medicine will not do some leap forward. But let's say, I think it's not about us, it's about the ones that are coming behind us. And I think this is what we have to deliver to them. And I think this really goes, I will not go in the solving entire mankind problems, but I would say really aligning on the objectives and having clear objectives, which are, it's so nice word, smart, which should be attainable and all are timely and things like this is what we have to put ourselves. And I think it goes always kind of top down. And I think now also in the Fit for 55, it's coming a bottom-up feedback. And I think exactly this feedback is important, that top-down decision and bottom-up capability match. Certainly not to destroy the Fit for 55, but really to not leave someone behind. Because if we leave someone behind in economical manner, such countries might not recover for decades. And I think this is not what EU wants.
Okay, dear ladies and gentlemen, you were so kind for listening to us. I know it was a difficult job with such a moderator and all these gentlemen. We haven't had a lady. Come on. I'm so sorry. But in every man, there is a strong feminine side. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day.
Peter,
Državni sekretar,
I'm so sorry, he unintentionally left me out for the closing word, but nevertheless.
I thought you had the closing word before. Oh, you want to have the closing word. The minister in absence, the floor is yours, of course.
I heard from the audience, my good friend Dr. Podobnik said that we need a Bible, that only we can listen to the Bible. You said that. I heard everything. Will the Fit 55 be the new Bible, is the question. How we will interpret the Fit for 55 comes to every government, to every people, to every manager, how to interpret that and how to put that in life. We cannot have regulation for everything. Thank you, Peter, for giving me the last word.
Thank you for kindly taking the last word. It's been a great day. Thank you very much, dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, dear panelists.